Hello, friends. I am thrilled because I have two of my very favorite people with me today, Sarah and Annette from Thanks for Visiting. And they are just incredible business women. They are the queens of short term rentals. So if you exist at all or aspire to exist in the STR space, especially if you're thinking about Airbnb or Verbo or anything like that, please make sure you check these women out. But Sarah and Annette, thank you for joining us on the show today.
It's our honor. Thank you for having us.
We're going to one up you and say we are double thrilled since there's two of us to be on the show today.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's been really fun getting to know you two over the years. Obviously, our friendship started because you all joined our mutual friend Haley's program years ago. And from that, created this incredible program hosting business mastery. And then today, actually, the case study we're going to be uncovering is how Sarah and Annette implemented a tool called Deadline Funnel to actually increase the conversions off of that free workshop that years ago I got to see the behind the scenes of them building. So anyways, it feels like a very full circle moment. Before we get into the case study, I would love to hear each of your individual Cubicle to CEO stories. That's how we always kick off the podcast. So I guess in 2 minutes or less, what was that ultimate catalyst that launched you into the world of entrepreneurship? Sarah, I'll start with you.
I admittedly have never been in a cubicle. I was a New York City Broadway performer,
but stage to CEO.
Stage to CEO. There we go. I like that.
New show.
But I did have stints in hotels and restaurants. And so it was when I was working at a hotel as a bar manager. I had a dry spell with my acting career. And I really just started to think about starting my own business and what that would mean. And I never looked back.
And for me, I specifically remember I used to listen to a CD, yes, a compact disc in my car on my way to work, my commute. And it was a Success CD. It was from Jim Rohn. And he had a quote that profits are better than wages. And I understood it, but I didn't get it. I was like, how do I get from wages to profits? And so I just kept listening to those and kept learning. And I might have gotten quit or fired from my last job from a company that I helped build. I'd helped build two companies alongside the CEO. And it was this next turn. I was like, wait a second, it's my turn. It's my turn to sit in that CEO seat alongside with my founder, my co-founder. But profits are better than wages. I kept reciting that and I needed to figure out how I could get there.
Ooh, I've never heard that Jim Rohn quote before, but I know he's really famous for that one. Like, you are essentially the accumulation of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, right? So really wise guy, clearly. And it's funny, actually, Sarah, because you're definitely not the first guest on here who has trespassed that journey from stage to CEO. For some reason, I think entrepreneurship attracts a lot of people from the arts, like from that industry, because one form or another, a lot of entrepreneurship is telling stories and being visible and camera facing. And so I'm sure a lot of those skills have translated. And then to your point, Annette, I think it's so smart if you want to work in a startup to actually be on the early team, like be one of the first employees at a startup, because you really get that up close experience without having to take all the risk first. So that's really smart. I'm glad you two found each other though. I remember you told me the story. Of course, our show focuses on the stuff you can't Google, but just so our listeners have a little bit of context, can you share the 30-second version of your meet cute at City Council?
Yes. I had just moved here from New York City. I had a spreadsheet of the entire United States. We had our first short-term rental in the most expensive real estate capital of the US. And we wanted to cash in our profits there and find a place where we could exponentially grow our real estate portfolio. My husband is a big data person, so we put a bunch of data on a spreadsheet, and we ultimately, long story short, ended up in Columbus, Ohio. Weeks later, City Council was like, we are going to put some limits on how you can operate short-term rentals. And I was like, oh, heck no. I did not leave New York City. I still love it, there, to not be able to do what I wanted to do in my new hometown. And so I showed up at the City Council meeting with like this long script. Like, I am like a front row.
On stage.
I was a valedictorian over here. Like, I was ready to like throw down. And that's when Annette came and sat next to me.
Mm-hmm. I had strategically sat next to Sarah. Someone had mentioned her and I had been Instagram stalking her. So I accidentally sat down next to her and got her phone number. And I was producing a podcast at the time and asked her to be on a guest on the show. But that show never hit the airwaves because magic happened when I interviewed her as I was batching the beginning episodes, and all those episodes never came to fruition because I asked Sarah if she wanted to do this with me. And so that's where the story starts at City Council. It's the first one I went to and the last, but well, not the last. The last one, but not the last one I will go to. So,
Well, I mean, everybody who listens to my show knows I'm a huge Swiftie. You literally played the mastermind. Like, that song Mastermind where like it's so intentional. You already knew where to plant yourself to meet Sarah. That's hilarious. I love that. Okay, give us a little context as we're starting into this case study. Like I mentioned, you guys have a program hosting business mastery and you sell it with a free workshop training. After you implemented Deadline Funnel, the conversions from that workshop increased by 50%. We're going to get into the details of what that implementation actually looked like. But before we do, help me understand prior to implementing that strategy, what was the average sales cycle from someone watching your workshop, your free workshop, to actually becoming a student in your program?
this is so great. We don't even know those numbers because we weren't even focused on a sense of urgency. We didn't even know that people would really buy immediately or within that 3-day or 72, 96 hour, container, because we had kind of been letting them run wild, I guess. And so since we didn't have any urgency, they didn't have any urgency, we weren't even collecting that data. So that kind of shows how novice we were, and just like, oh, they'll buy it thinking they would buy it anytime. And they were, but not what happened once we created that sense of urgency. Then we could really start to we got excited about our numbers. Not that we weren't excited before, but it really like injected this like excitement of, oh my gosh, what happened? Like the X amount of people are buying before the workshop's over. And now they're like, it's really skyrocketing. So we weren't tracking them. I actually want to offer that to the audience because sometimes, you just get things
One
going
step at a
one step at a
time.
time. And so we were just excited to have the workshop out there and people buying. But that's when we started to look at the numbers, we couldn't really confidently know how much money because we didn't know what that buyer cycle was. We need some more consistency here. And we knew that number was a problem. We weren't consistently making a certain amount. So we were like, how can we figure out how to get consistent and that sense of urgency and using some tools to help buyers make a decision? That's where the Deadline Funnel helped us tremendously and getting consistent numbers.
That makes a lot of sense. And I applaud you, by the way, for being transparent and saying, at the beginning, we didn't know because we didn't know we should be tracking those numbers, right? And I actually appreciate that was your journey, because I think so often people hesitate to hit publish on something because they feel they might be missing some micro step and they're not quite ready. And I say that in air quotes because when is anyone ready for anything? But you feel like, oh, if I don't have every puzzle piece in place, I can't hit publish on this. So I'm so glad that you guys put your Evergreen workshop out there, started getting eyeballs on it, started getting sales, and then realized, oh, wait a second, I think we're still missing a piece to the puzzle. So I know you don't have the data on maybe the average cycle it took for someone from when they watched to when they purchased, but do you remember the average conversion rate from total leads to total sales back then, like prior to implementing the strategy, or even a rough estimate?
It was definitely less than 1%.
Yeah. And we had a lot lower leads flows coming through too, So yeah, it was under 1% because again, there wasn't any urgency. And I can say, we would even say like in our workshop, you can join us at any time.
We'll always be here.
And we thought that was being kind, Ellen, like telling them, and we still tell them we'll always be here, but that's after they kind of go through our whole sequence. But I want to offer this to all the listeners. You're serving your client, your customer. They need some encouragement. We are humans. We will waffle. We need guidance in making that decision. So, we had resistance to putting timelines in and that sense of urgency and that extra email before maybe because our price increases. I think we should say that to the listeners. Our price increases when our deadline funnel comes to the end. So they can join at a discounted rate immediately for about 72 to 96 hours after they watch our workshop. And so they can join us at any time. So we feel really good about that. Like, you are always welcome into our community. However, we reward them with a lower price and taking action. So we reward them for taking action. And so I just want the listeners to know that, like, it's not sleazy or salesy. people need encouraged to make a decision. We need that push over the ledge, or we'll just waffle around forever.
And there is a buyer out there. I am one of them who I want to buy from someone who's confident. I want to buy from someone who loves the product that they have created. And they're like, if you are not in here, you are missing out, and you mean it to the bottom of your soul. So Annette and I work really hard to make sure our product is truly next level. There's nothing like it. We are better than everyone else out there because we work night and day to make it that way. And so for me, I had to make sure that we were confident in like, yes, join us. It's going to be worth it for you.
So data though, because I know we want to get into the numbers, we'll tell you this number with confidence because this is where we lead. And listeners, we have multiple revenue streams, but I can tell you we were about 10K months. And when we, switched that strategy to sense of urgency, we were going to 50K months. And that wasn't really changing too much. It was really just sense of urgency. So let me repeat that. We were around 10K months, and trust me, we were over the moon excited about that. And we were just trying to increase that. And then we put that sense of urgency in, and we were like, what? So we saw that bump pretty much, I don't want to say overnight, but in the first, overnight. When we launched the deadline funnel, the first one, we were like, what? So we did bake in. We can also let you know that in that case study, once we did the deadline funnel, we also did some fast action bonuses to really make it juicy. Hey, well, what's so different about joining now and joining later? And it was like, hey, when this deadline funnel, like when this clock hits 0, not only does this price go away, there are these bonuses that were really juicy. And so it's like, well, why would we ever join after that? We don't want the price or the juiciness to go away. So we had 2 levers we were pulling there. One was the price and one was the bonuses. So it just wasn't this like ticking time bomb, boom, the price is gone. It was like ticking time bomb, like, hey, these bonuses are going away. Do not miss out on these. So I think the pricing and the bonuses combined were the magic, alongside deadline funnel.
I love that. And I have a question I want to ask you there. But before I do, just to back it up a little bit and provide even more details around the context of the program you're selling. It's a 6-month course, to my understanding, right? Hosting Business Mastery. And the price, like you said, at the end of the deadline funnel, so 72 to 96 hour window, goes up by $1,500. What is the actual price of the program itself?
It's $24.97 is our pay in full price. And
awesome.
And I will let you know too, people will have opinions about this. About 90% of our buyers take us up on the pay in full because our payment plan goes up a little bit. And our avatar, our buyer, they're investors. So, this is actually a smaller investment compared to their house and all of the furnishings that they're purchasing.
Yeah, and that makes sense in the context of, like you said, who your ideal client is. In comparison, obviously anything in real estate is probably at minimum multiple 4 figures. So that is more in their buying behavior. I would love to know, before I go back to that previous question that I hinted at, I would love to know first though, why $1,500 more? Where did you arrive at that price increase? Was it kind of just like out of the blue and it worked, so you stuck with it, or was there strategy behind that?
Yes. So we had a coach that helped us with that. And there were 2 things there. One is we still wanted to make it a price that like people would actually join. We've had a few people through the funnel that have joined. So we didn't want to make it so outrageous that they would never join. We really did want to have something that was out there. So that was part of the strategy. And then the second part was just a percentage increase of, and I will let you know our prices increased. So before it was almost a 50%, we were at 50% and then went higher, but that was the strategy there, is a percentage increase and then still a potential obtainable and not like going up to $20,000 or something like, then it really looked like a squeeze and not like genuine.
We do price anchor during the workshop and on the sales page, but when it comes to whether you buy before the cart closes or after, that it remain obtainable.
Okay, that makes complete sense. Going back to this magic duo of bonuses, a fast action bonus paired with the price increase once the countdown expires, just so I understand correctly, was the fast action bonus or bonuses, plural, only available to people if they purchased while they were watching the workshop, or was it the full 72, 96-hour window that they had the opportunity for both the bonuses and the price discount?
Over here at Thanks for Visiting, we like to make things we have two actual, but we have a bonus for if they buy during the workshop, actually while they're watching it. And then we have bonuses that they would receive during the cart open. Essentially,
if they pay in full.
If they pay in full. So we have a pay in full bonus, and then we also have a pay in full before the workshop ends bonus. So we make it like super juicier there. So there's bonuses that everyone can participate in during the whole deadline, and then some that are just workshop only bonuses.
If you two had to do a hot take or a pick on whether you feel the expiring price discount or the expiring bonuses were more influential in getting people to take action, which side are you going to sit on?
Ellen.
Well, what's crazy is when we were analyzing this for the show, it was the deadline funnel, but some people, now you want me to really dig into the numbers, because some people are actually buying before they even know that the price would increase, because they're buying on the workshop when we just announced that there's workshop bonuses that will expire.
Yeah.
So I think there's a case for both of them.
I will, and I don't have the data in front of me, but I was until we recently hired someone to help us, but I was tracking the data, and I would say it's the price change that motivates.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I wanted to ask because, it's this really interesting marketing / philosophical debate. Like, are humans more driven by added value or decreased spending, right? Because it's kind of like this interesting proposition.
Well, Sarah and I were just having this. We've had some very in-depth conversations about ChatGPT recently and just human behavior. And I think the beautiful part of what you just said, Ellen, humans are motivated by both of those things. So I also think that's why we saw an increase in sales, is because we were talking to different humans and humans that make decisions on different things, So
Right.
I think that our buyers, the ones that are buying before, it is because the value, and the other one is just the price increase. So I think, we have people sitting in both of those seats. And so I think for listeners, like, if you're wanting to know if it's one or the other, I think it's both. You need to think that your buyer isn't just going to fit in this one silo, and what's going to be valuable to them. Is it a different price point or more value? So it's interesting.
To that same point, I would also offer up that obviously, Ellen, this hasn't been set it and forget it. So since beginning of last year, so beginning of 2022, we have made a lot of tweaks to our funnel and to our offering and to our price and to our cart open and cart close from last, when the market was, people couldn't buy it fast enough, to now there's a little bit more scarcity in the marketplace, right? And the buyer confidence has dwindled. So we have to change the way we show up to offer them our product. So there's also that too of what it's still the same format, but we've had to tweak it ever so slightly. And we will always have to do that too.
Yeah. And I love that I want to share with everybody, like, there have been some struggles recently on like this funnel that was flowing before has kind of got some, we need to put it in the dishwasher, open up the holes. Like, what is going on here? But we haven't even had a chance to, we didn't put this to you when we were, talking about the podcast, but we started doing book of calls. Things that we didn't, where it was just straight watch the workshop. Now we're like, no, times are they're changing right now. They want to talk to somebody. They want to make sure, like, are those two women that are on the screen, are they real? And so we've implemented some stuff that was never a part of our plan, but we're willing to do the work. And when we see the stats change, what do we need to do to increase our conversion rate? And so that's been a new thing that we've had to like put into the mix. And so we do want to let the listeners know that, a funnel isn't set it and forget it, and constantly need to be looking at your conversion rate and what's happening, and, fluctuating pricing and just testing the market.
I really, really respect you two for sharing sharing that behind the scenes tidbit because to your point, I think especially in the online course space, it's very easy for educators, especially in this space, to present this image that courses are passive, that evergreen funnels and evergreen courses especially are passive, when we all know in reality it's not. Like you just shared, there are changing circumstances that require you to implement, test new things. And so I really appreciate that, many years into this funnel that you still are paying close attention to what you can do to not only improve your conversion, but actually improve the experience on the buying side, which I really honor and respect. I know that the deadline funnel increased the conversions total by 50%. If we're looking at workshop conversion rate, you said prior it was below 1%. Do you know where it stands today?
Yes. So we have been doing some testing. It was incredible in January. Right now we're in June. I was like, what month are we in? January was incredible. And it's that typical, let's go, new year, new you, right? Like, let's do the thing we've always said we're going to do. So January was off the charts. And we went live again in February, March, April. And that's when Annette and I really started to see that change in the buyer behavior. So we made some tweaks. We kept going live so that we could get some more data from that interaction with a live audience, essentially.
Can I pause real quick to ask a clarifying question? When you said you were going live, are you saying you were teaching what was your Evergreen workshop live once a month during those months? So, February, March, April. And was the Evergreen workshop version still running simultaneously with the lives or no?
It was not.
Okay.
We tried that and we failed. Not that people can't do it, but it's a lot of orchestrating, especially if you are using something like Deadline Funnel. You definitely don't want, you don't want to be running ads to a live event, running ads to an evergreen. We just had to pump the brakes. We tried it. We epically failed because people were getting different deadline notices and different emails. And I also want to say we really failed trying to run an evergreen and live at the same time, but we have tried to do that because we're like, hey, let's the evergreen run, we'll do some live so we can test, because we wanted to change some stuff in our workshop, but we epically failed at that. But I think also going back to your original, the conversion question, we have been as high as 5% down to 0.5%. And I can say one of our biggest frustrations in this industry is we hear people throw around conversion rate. And because we're on calls and people are like, oh, I'm at a 20%, a 50. And we're like, if we were at a 20% conversion
multi-million
rate, we would deck a million. Like, what are they talking about? Like the top of the funnel? Like, where is the conversion? So I can let you know, like our conversion rate that we're talking about on the show is actual workshop signups.
Yeah.
To not people that watched and who converted, not people that booked a call and then converted, from the very top where they give us their email to join the workshop to buying. It has been between 5% and all the way down to 0.5%. And yes, 0.5%. And that is a painful percentage, but that's why we made some changes. And that 5% was, we don't know what we did on that one. We're trying to get back there, but I want to be very honest that it has been that big of a gap.
I'm living for this transparency. This is why I love you too. I knew you would bring the honesty to this. Okay, let's circle back real quick though to the bonuses, because I think even though this case study is primarily focused around urgency, I think urgency only works if you position, especially on the value giving side, it only works if the value incentivizes urgency, right? So what are the two bonuses, the two pay in full bonuses, the one that they get if they buy during the workshop, and then the one that they buy if they do it within that, 72 to 96 hour window before the deadline timer expires? What are those two bonuses and how did you choose those to pair with your course?
The fast action bonus, so buy before we're no longer live, right? On the first time you're watching the workshop, is a customized listing audit, which means once you have your listing, whether it's on Airbnb or Vrbo or just a direct booking, we will send it to our coach. It's powered by data by a program called Rank Breeze, and we will essentially dissect it into a Loom video where we give you actionable tips on how to make improvements, just like any other SEO like Google. You can make improvements to your listing so that you show up on Airbnb's first page, which obviously the more eyes you get on your property sooner, the more bookings you're going to get. So it's this like direct money in your pocket by data-driven insights to your listing, where it stands and where it could be. So that's what we offer.
And we did a lot of work around how can we make this super sexy? Like it has to be a no-brainer. And I want to let everybody know we're like, what can be super sexy? What are people going to want to buy? But what isn't going to take more of our time? Because our first thing was like, oh, a one-on-one call with us, 20 minutes. People will want that. They'll want to buy that. And we're like, wait, we cannot scale that. We cannot scale one-on-one time. So then we were like, okay, let's do these listing audits with one of our coaches. But then they were like, that's going to be a calendaring nightmare. Like, how are we going to make sure? So then we reduced it down to, all right, there isn't any one-on-one. It can feel one-on-one, but our coaches now dissect the listing. They do this audit on their own time. They create a Loom video. And the way that we made that super juicy for the buyer is that, look, you're going to get and this is true, they're going to get so many tips in that video. They're going to want to have it recorded so they can go and implement all of the improvements. So that is something that this bonus was like, because we had a few bonuses and they weren't converting. And we like the day that we put this one, we're like, it felt very one-on-one. I mean, it is one-on-one, but it was like, how can we give that one-on-one experience, but replicate it? And this right now, this is what we have landed on for that bonus.
I love it because it's personalized feedback. Like you said, it's individual to that particular listing, but it's asynchronous in communication, which I really have been loving even in our own business this year, just finding ways to implement asynchronous communication. Because to your point, I think most of us are tired of having our calendars be riddled with meetings where we're face to face on camera, and the energy it takes to even actively listen, to be, I mean, even podcasting, as you two know, with a very successful show of your own, it's difficult to batch record many interviews in a row because just the process of sitting and like nodding your head and smiling can really take it out of you.
We're really nodding and smiling hard right now because we understand that has been something that Sarah and I, if we wanted to talk about conversion rates, is like, what is the amount of energy that we have to expend, to not just acquire our client, but then service them, and so you really need to think about that when you're creating these bonuses and just creating your workshop and your programs. And so with that bonus, it was not a bright light went off. Like we had a lot of conversations around it. We tested a few things, and this was the best way to serve our client, serve their revenue, and also serve our team and make sure that they were taken care of.
I love that. And then Sarah, do you want to speak to the other bonus, the one that they can get if they, buy before the deadline funnel expires?
Actually, there's a few, but
Oh, okay, wonderful.
yeah, and they're great because they already existed in our arsenal. So we have a live event every year, and last year it was in Las Vegas. We didn't promise recordings because it was our first event and we didn't know how those would turn out. And we are obsessed with quality over here. Thanks for visiting, but they turned out great. So if you buy before the cart closes, you will see our live event from Las Vegas in your course portal.
You get all the replays. So that event was,
Nice.
hundreds of dollars, and they won't have to travel, but they'll get all the recordings there. So that's a huge offer. And we're kind of like, our live event for this year is already launched, so they can see there's a huge value. Like a general admission ticket, $797. They get last year's for free. That's a no-brainer.
We have, so we like to actually learn this from Haley Burkhead of, they want the pizza, but they need the broccoli. And so our serving them, broccoli secretly is we have a safety session. So we walk through a vacation rental home. We talk about international building code because we also take what we do very seriously, and you're inviting strangers into a strange home, and there are a lot of safety considerations. So they get these bite-sized videos educating them on international building codes. And then finally, this is very sexy. People always ask us for this, is a property analysis spreadsheet. Ellen, you and I were oogling over one at a mastermind.
We have shown you our bonus, baby.
Yeah. So, right, that spreadsheet, if you want to know if a property is going to show you the ROI that you are needing for your for you, we offer that as well if you buy before the cart closes.
I love that. So all of these bonuses are really enhancing the core curriculum they're getting in their course, which I think is a great takeaway for our listeners. I think sometimes I've noticed this on the consumer side when I'm purchasing courses. Sometimes bonuses can feel like they are almost a distraction from the reason why people showed up to buy this program in the first place. And you feel like you're adding a hodgepodge of random things in your inventory and trying to repurpose it in a way that doesn't feel cohesive. So I really love the way you walked us through how each of those bonuses really enhances the experience and allows people to get even better results faster than if they didn't have access to those bonuses. So thank you for sharing that. If we're looking at this discussion of urgency in general, I know, Annette, you touched on this a little bit earlier, that you feel people really need that encouragement and guidance sometimes to come to a decision. There is the flip side of that conversation. And in fact, we had a guest on here a few months ago who actually decided to remove all urgency from her funnel. So it's really interesting. That's what I love about this show, is that there's no one right way to do business, and there can be success in, no matter where you fall in that spectrum. But for the naysayers who might be like, we feel like urgency isn't as ethical, what would you say to that beyond what you've already shared? What new perspective might you lend to someone with a mindset like that?
I mean, I think the word ethics is like really heavy because, I can walk into a grocery store today and see a bottled water for 99 cents, for $2.99, for $3.99 to $4.90, like, is it ethical to sell bottled water at all of these different price points? So I don't think of it on that level, but we've had a lot of discussion. We didn't have it before because we're like, no, and it wasn't converting. And we'd actually, when it comes to ethics, let's talk about this. We can tell you, we've raised our prices. We've done a very stair step, because this kind of goes in line with your question about deadline funnel and creating that. Our current price point is almost like 4 times our beta launch. And so ethically, should I go back and charge our beta clients more because they got a deal? Or should I charge our current clients less? It's like we've gotten, better over time. But I just think when it comes to the pricing and like urgency, we are very rooted. And then what we're doing is not slimy or sleazy. And do you want to know what happens all the time? Let me tell you what happens all the time. People miss our deadline funnel. I'm going to give this hot tip out there. They miss it and they email us. And I have a last call link that is that price, and I honor it. I've honored it. We've probably had a handful of people actually pay the full price. Every other person that is asked. So if we talk about, that's where I sleep good at night, is we have that ready. If anybody's like, oh my gosh, I just missed it, or will this be available again? I'm like, absolutely. Here's a link when you're ready. So I have this backup link that is like, this is a hot tip. And I have it's last call. So it feels really like, oh my gosh, this is the last call. We're staying open for you, and we will honor that price.
On top of that, Ellen, is we can feel also incredibly good that our podcast episodes, we show up twice a week too, and we drop some knowledge. You could listen to our entire database of podcast episodes and really go to short-term rental school. We have different content. On top of that, on YouTube, completely different. You know what I mean? So, and Instagram, we have Airbnb hot tips every single day. So we also feel very good that if, hey, this sense of urgency didn't get you off the fence because you simply cannot fit this into your lifestyle right now, whether it's financially or time, you can meet us literally 7 days a week, wherever you like,
for
online.
$3.99.
For $3.99. And so we feel good in that too.
I love that Sarah just said that, because we are spilling some tea right now. Okay. We send out a survey when the deadline funnel ends, basically saying we made you the best offer. What can we do? What could we have done to make this juicier for you, to make this a no-brainer? And the feedback that I get, I actually answer those emails because I convert so many of those survey questions into sales. Oh, I missed the timer, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, no problem. I got you. And I give them that link. Or they have a question, and I was doing book of calls before I really knew I was doing a book of calls, because they're like, oh, I just have a few questions. I'm like, let me answer them. So that deadline also coupled with that survey, because it'd be weird to send that survey out if we didn't have we just made you our best offer. Why wasn't it a no-brainer? So I think we follow up the deadline ending with how can we serve
you better?
What can we add? What can we subtract? And it's, if it's pricing, we get pricing. And exactly what Sarah said, I say, no worries. We show up all these places for free. We will support you there.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Mic drop. Doing double hands because there's two of you. But I love that encouragement for people because I wanted to ask you that tough question because I know there's listeners who may feel hesitant to implement a strategy that creates urgency in their business because they see both sides of the coin. And I love the way that you really show up to help people make a decision because ultimately, this is what I always share in sales too. Ultimately, no one is helped when they're stuck, right? And that's not a good place for anybody to be. So if you give them the clarity to move forward, whether it's a yes or no, it's truly a win for both your business and theirs. And so I really love the perspective you shared there. I realized we're like, 40 minutes into this conversation and I did not actually ask you all to explain the mechanics of deadline
Mm.
funnel because in my head I'm like, yeah, I like we've used it before in our business before, and that is a wrong assumption on my part to assume that all of our listeners may be of the same understanding. So just real quick, high level, when we've been talking about utilizing a tool like Deadline Funnel, can you explain to our listeners what happens if someone misses that countdown timer and they try to go back to that link and purchase? What is that experience on the user side so we're all on the same
Let
page?
me put my tech hat on here. And it's not a dunce cap. I'm going to wear this with pride. Okay, here's the deal. With Deadline Funnel, it's essentially cooking the attendee, and so it knows to what time, because you can do a Deadline Funnel if it's a set timed workshop, or if it's variable. So they will continue, and I want to let everyone know there are a lot of different options the way the Deadline Funnel will display, and also how the expiration will display. So it'll attach to your site, and you get to design it within they have a few different designs that you can choose from. But what I love of Deadline Funnel, you can put it in your email campaign. So if people are, it's probably what people are most familiar with, is a countdown timer in your email. You can place the code, the HTML code, into your email and it will display there. It will also display on your sales page. When a buyer, when it's expired, if they go back to those emails or go back to the page, it'll say offer expired. However, when I talk about design, you can choose that design. Like ours kind of has that stamp on it, like sold out, like offer expired, different designs that you can choose. And I will let you know this. I know some people, when the offer expires, they still have the same exact offer. It's just putting that sense of urgency. So kind of circling back to the ethics of it, Deadline Funnel also gives you an opportunity that if you want nothing to happen, the countdown timer just goes away. I will let you know there is some finessing and there is some testing that you need to do to bring Deadline Funnel into your funnel. So I also don't want to mislead people like, oh, I just like put a little widget in and it was done. We just had an issue with it because we switched something this weekend, and it wasn't an issue with the tool. It was an issue with the way that we were trying to utilize it. But they do give you a lot of different options to create it so it works within, what your aesthetic is, what type of urgency, that type of thing.
I love that. I remember when we used it for our evergreen webinar before we retired our program last year. It was when people would go to the sales page and try to click on the checkout page, it would
Mhm.
reroute them to a different checkout. So it's like you could never go back to the original checkout with the original price, the special action price, or however you want to call it. I appreciate the tool because, like you said, you can either have the set timer. So, like if you're doing a live launch, it's like everyone's countdown is going to expire on this date at this time. Or if you're doing the evergreen version, it's like it cookies it to when someone first watches it or lands on a page, and then their 72-hour window starts individualized to them. So just to make that clear for our listeners, I did want to pull out one little tech piece. I don't know if you actually know the answer to this, but I'm assuming yes, Annette, if you if you jumped on the earlier tech question, the one about getting the fast action bonus if they're watching the recorded evergreen workshop and they buy while the workshop is happening. How do you set that piece up so that, I guess, on the back end, you're able to track whether or not they bought during the workshop versus just, waited for the video to finish before buying?
So the way that this is done is you can create a separate sales page. So we use Webinar Jam, and so our offer pops up during the webinar. Or offer link that you put there, whatever platform you use behind the scenes, it would just be that link goes specifically to that fast action bonus sales page.
Perfect. Simple solution.
Right. So then throughout the rest of the funnel, they would buy a different product or a different offer, if you will. So you
Right.
create a fast action offer. So there's some duplicating of some things that have to happen, but that's how it did go down.
And we've had colleagues in the space who, when they're evergreen, everyone gets a fast action bonus if they buy.
Yeah. Let's be very transparent there too. We didn't know how to set things up, so it was like we were like Oprah. We're like, you get a bonus, and you get a bonus, and you get a bonus. Like we just gave everybody bonuses because it wasn't set up. So it was like, and like, okay, who cares? Like, I mean, like I'd rather over deliver on bonuses. So also, everyone, don't get so stressed out about like all the tech. Like literally we were giving everyone the book because we didn't know how to set it up properly, or we thought we had, and we're like, oh, we don't know. Like it was so I also just go with it. And so that was the thing too, is like everyone was getting bonuses, that's just how it went in the beginning.
Well, I mean, to your point, there's never, I think, a downside to providing more people value, right? So when you look at it from that positive perspective, I think that's a really great way to do business. And again, I'm just really impressed by how honest you guys are that it wasn't set up perfectly from day one, and that there have been so many iterations and tweaks and learning lessons to get it to the point where it is functioning much more smoothly and as intended, with the correct bonuses and correct prices going to the people who take action versus who don't. But I hope that's real encouragement for any of you listening today who may be hearing this and getting all these new ideas for how you can implement bonuses or deadlines to increase your urgency for your offer, but feeling like, wait a second, I don't know if I can implement all of these pieces at once. Just choose one thing. And if it isn't perfect from day one, like Annette said, oh well, you're showing up big for your people, and you can continue to improve from there.
I want to interject something there, is that I want to say our mistakes have been some of our biggest like revenue generating lessons. And I've been speaking about it this whole time. I'm pretty sure that last call sales page that we created for people that missed the deadline, I'm pretty sure we had to create that because we messed up a deadline funnel early, like it ended early, and everybody's like, what? So we had to create this like special link because things had messed up. And I was like, oh, this is a really lovely sales page. It's great to make them feel like they're getting a last call. And we've just kept that around, but it's because of something, it was like a Band-Aid for an error we made, but now it's part of our process. And so that's why I wouldn't be scared of some of these tech things happening, because they've really helped us maybe create even better things that we wouldn't have had we not, fell down and knocked a few teeth out a time or two, got some stitches.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this is like the Ross form of entrepreneurship, right? It's like it's constant problem solving. Like that's really all business is like you are met with new challenges, and then you solve them, and then you progress, and then you evolve to the next challenge. So whether we love it or hate it at times, that really is the root of entrepreneurship, and it's what keeps this game interesting. So anyways, to wrap this case study today, I wanted to pull out one last tidbit of something you had included in our form preparing for this interview today, and that was that you started to notice that students were buying, like the ones that were buying during the live workshop or while they were watching the workshop, the timing of when they started to purchase was when you started sharing testimonials and sharing actually like a behind the scenes tour of the product itself, of the membership or of the course, and what it would look like once they were inside as a student. So talk to us about that. Was that a data point you noticed recently? Was that early on? Once you noticed it, did you do anything to amplify it? For example, like move it up earlier in the workshop or add more testimonials, or like just walk us through kind of your thought process around that data point.
We actually have changed this and seen some great results since we even turned this form in. Let's talk to them about the video testimonials that we've implemented.
There's so many good stories to share, Ellen, but just this one is we had, like you said, we added testimonials once we saw that people were buying, they were buying when they saw the success of our members. So then we were like, oh, let's take it up a notch and let's do video testimonials, where like we stop the slides and our faces, and it goes to people who like give a case study or a live testimonial. Well, it was a live webinar and I didn't understand the tech side of it. So we would play it and no sound would happen. They couldn't hear it.
Oh no. Just miming.
Yeah.
The best part is an attendee
She helped us.
walked us through it live on the webinar, Ellen. She was like, oh, go up to your sound on your Mac and change it from headphones to your Mac speaker. And boom, it started playing. We converted more people on that live webinar because of that authenticity too, of that mix up.
Wow.
I would guess like
Yeah.
that was the one variable. And it went well, from the rest of that webinar on and moving forward.
But what we did, we started with just text
Yeah.
testimonials with people's faces.
Yeah.
And we saw some positive uptick there. So we took it up another notch and we sprinkled in more testimonials. And those testimonials were more evidential, is that a word? Screenshots. So really authentic things. So we would do like Facebook group posts. Maybe it's their Airbnb, behind the scenes, their booking, like their revenue. So we went from the cliche quotes to really like the authentic testimonials. We wove more of those in. And then the next notch is what Sarah's referring to, an actual video testimonial so during our workshop, it's not just us. They can kind of see who the other people that have gone through the program and hear it in their voice. And so we've we keep iterating on the authenticity of the testimonial. And we've seen some really positive feedback each time that we've done that.
One other tip that we learned from attending someone else's workshop was we used to have this, and we still do have a timer at the end, again, sense of urgency, and we would stick to it. And we would end it if it was like 15 minutes of Q&A, what have you, and we would stick to it and end the call, right? And then we attended one, or I think Annette attended one, where she hung on for like 2 hours. Like if there were still hundreds of people in the room, she's like, I'm not going to let go of these warm leads. They're obviously interested. And so we tried it and with great success. And we just, if they were asking great questions about the course, if they were engaged, why are we going to let them go when we have the opportunity to continue to convert them at that point? And we learned a lot from the questions they asked, their verbiage in the chat, getting testimonials from them about the webinar in the chat with this more casual feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's been great too.
And so for those people, like you said, there's different there's different humans or different buyer cycles. So someone that needs all the questions answered, and we stay on. So if they want to watch for an hour, they can, so I think that's important too. Just notice who's watching, and reply back to them. And I think that's been such a huge shift of like, even if there's one person in your funnel, you need to pay attention to them,
Absolutely. And to your point, thank you, by the way, for sharing that story of, the sound debacle. That has happened to me. There was actually recently one of our most recent paid to create lives. It's always worked perfectly. So I have no idea why all of a sudden it didn't, but we always play music while people are coming in, set the mood, grooving. And over here, I am literally like dancing, to music. It's silent. Like, no, I'm hearing the music like blasted. I'm having a great time. Everyone else is just silent, hearing silence. And you just have to laugh at yourself sometimes. Like they happen, those moments happen, but people, they appreciate realizing, okay, you are a real human. And I do think it actually forms a deeper sense of trust. So anyways, to human is to err. And those were some great additional points that you guys shared about how you leveled up your testimonials. I want to direct our listeners, by the way, Annette and Sarah today have talked about catering bonuses and urgency-based incentives to different buyer personality types. So if you want to dig a little deeper into that concept, I'll link Linda Sadoo's episode on our podcast, which actually Sarah and Annette have worked with her to build an amazing quiz. So check out that episode. Also, Annette mentioned the difference between typing out a lovely quote or testimonial from someone and placing their picture next to it versus taking real receipts of screen grabs of people saying in their own words, this happened, or I'm celebrating this win. And Amanda Walker, a couple episodes ago, was talking about the difference between formal and informal versions of client testimonials and how they impact customers differently. So we'll also link that episode for you in the show notes if you want to refer to those for additional context. But I'm so, so grateful, you two, for showing up as your true, authentic selves. I wouldn't expect any different. What is something that you are working on at Thanks for Visiting that you want to share with our listeners? And where can people best connect with you?
There's two of us. I don't know what she wants to mention or what I would have mentioned.
So you do
Okay. So we're very excited to share that we are bringing back our live event which is geared towards owner operator, independent hosts. So you're not going to see big property management companies there. Right? This is for the individual investor who is leveraging short-term rentals, Airbnb, Vrbo. It's going to be in our hometown of Columbus, Ohio this year, September 24th, 26th. So even if you've been on the fence, you want to know what our industry's like, hint, it's super fun. It's a bunch of fun people. We'll be doing that in Columbus this fall.
Yeah, and that's annual. So
Yes.
you can go to that. TFVcon.com is for that. Another thing that we're looking forward to, again, this is because we're paying attention to numbers, is we are bringing out a very beginner hosting handbook, and it is going to be a much lower price point because we want to be able to start someone out at a lower price point at the very beginning. So we were listening to our customers there, and that was a lot of the surveys. They quite weren't ready for our mastery program, so we want to get them at the hosting handbook. So it's at the beginning, but you can find us anywhere at Thanks for Visiting, and just Google that, look it up in your podcast player, Instagram, YouTube, but Thanks for Visiting is where you can find us.
And I mean, these two really create quality content. I don't know if you necessarily identify primarily as a media company the way that we do, but they are a full-blown media company. Like their YouTube content, their podcast content, their courses, their education is top tier. There is no one else I would recommend for anything in the short-term rental space. So we'll include all of their links in the show notes below. You don't even have to go Google it. Just scroll below and click away, follow, connect, say hi. Sarah and Annette, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I loved this conversation.
Thank you, Ellen.